Hello, I'm Renee Barabo. Welcome to the Shaman's Cave.
Hi, I'm Sandra Ingerman. Welcome to the Shaman's Cave.
Well, I know this is a little bit after the fact, but I suppose we should celebrate our mothers all the time. Sandra and I thought we would talk about mothers today because what came up for me was a few weeks ago, my mom got a infection and went to the hospital. And while she was there, she got a secondary infection. And it was the first time in my over 60 years that I realized that, I just always think my mom's, kind of a moving target over there in Maine, for me to have all of my feelings and relationships with. And I realized that life is impermanent, and that if how would I felt if something had happened. And I realized that I needed to come to terms with, what was my real relationship with my mother. And since it was Mother's Day this past weekend, we thought we'd do a show on mothers.
Yeah, yeah. I just, I just, I don't want to say, I don't know what the word is. I just um, acknowledged, honored the anniversary of my mother's death. My mother died 6 years ago, but very close to this particular time. And it was really interesting because I had a real talking relationship with my mother, where my mother talked to me about her childhood. My mother had a really terrible childhood, and she had a very, very uh, challenged relationship with her own family, which never got resolved when she died. And I gave so much love to my mother. I loved her so much. But I realized that there was still a lot of unspoken words. And as Renee is saying, um, we have to realize that there are people in our lives that aren't going to be here forever. And this is one of those times I'm noticing, there are different times on the planet. Of course, we have the COVID, but I'm actually talking non-COVID right now. I In just the past week, I think I've lost 3 or 4 friends.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm dealing with how I don't do endings,
Mm.
how I personally don't do endings. My whole life has been a challenge of how to end a job, how to end a relationship, how to say goodbye to somebody who's dying, how to say goodbye to a phase of life. And our parents, trust me, and I know Renee has more to say about this. Our parents, there are regrets that come in that follow you through your life if you don't say what you want to say. And I did the best I could with my mom. And when she was no longer speaking, I said everything I ever needed to say, more of an apology of how I hurt her when I left Brooklyn when I was 18 years old.
Mm. Yeah, I I guess I should have learned how to dance better with this because I lost my father very early in life. I was in my 30s, and I do remember going back to do a graveside amends to him. And he wasn't always the nicest guy, but on my mother, I think I just projected everything about my life to her. And I was so relieved a few years ago. I wrote this book called The Shaman Chef: How Cooking Saved My Life. And in her mind, it's an Sami's here. She likes this mother topic. It's an expose of how how all the unjustness that was done to me as a child. It hasn't really been published, but it was a really pivotal point in my relationship with my mother because all of a sudden she said, "That's not the story. That's only your part of the story." And so I'm there like, well, you could tell me your part of the story, I said, because in my world, this has shaped my entire life. And for those of you who have this, long told story to yourself, when I started to really get my mother's perspective on some of the story that I held so near and dear to my heart, I realized that I only did have a part of the story. And it was my truth. I was sticking to it. But it was when our relationship started to heal. So when Winds of Spirit came out, my mom asked me, and it was the first time ever she had expressed a need to me, was like, do you think you could take those first few chapters of your other book off your website so I can tell my friends to go over and see your book? So, I mean, German, Swedish, they don't talk about their feelings so much over there. And so that was like really huge for her. But it broke down I watched that our relationship had shifted to a new place because I was there like, absolutely. And for years I held on, oh no, this is my story. But then it was like, yeah, absolutely. If that would make you feel better, I can do that.
Yeah, my mom, she always used to say to me, you only remember the bad things. You don't remember everything that I did for you. Now, I just want to preface this because I want people to understand that my mother and I and my father and I had an amazing relationship. It was too amazing, actually, because I got too attached. I got so attached to them. People have actually said to me that they've never met anybody as attached to their parents as I was. And so, one of the things that I'd like to say to everybody is a lot of people who haven't been through a lot of losing of friends and parents go, well, I've grieved them so much while they're alive that I'm done with my grief when they're gone.
Uh-huh.
And that is a prevalent belief in our culture that if you grieve a person before you die, you finish your grief process. In our culture, we're always trying to how quick can we get our processes done so we can move on with life. And I can tell you, I took care of my parents for 4.5 years. I cried every day. Nobody can say, not one person on the planet can say I didn't grieve my parents while they were alive. 4.5 years, I cried every single day. And then when they died, that didn't even touch my grief.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't even touch my grief. And although I was attached to my parents and my mom in what could be called an unhealthy way, that grief, we all experience some form of grief when our parents leave. And it is important. Grief has its own life, it has its own process. But I think what Renee is saying is this is a time because that weaves into the grief process if you have a lot of unfinished business. And one of the things I teach in my death and dying workshops, and those workshops are available for you from all the teachers I've trained, which are hundreds of them, on shamanicteachers.com. And in that workshop, we actually teach you how to journey back to a loved one who died to finish up your unfinished business. And it could be a cat, a dog, a parrot, doesn't matter, a tree. But from a shamanic point of view, we always have access to beings because there's no time and there's no life, there's no death. What we're experiencing from a shamanic point of view is an illusion. So we always have that opportunity to speak to those who we still have unfinished business with. But why not do it now? Why wait for a journey?
Well, while you said that, I'm thinking, okay, maybe Sandra will take us on a little journey, not as complicated as that one, maybe just just to look at something that we have unfinished to say this week, because I too lost a really dear friend of mine this week. And I was really, and goes back to cleaning up your own side of the street. She was clear. I'm done. I'm ready to go. And she was gone in a minute, like, in a minute of a span of her life. I suppose it was a couple of short days and a month since she was diagnosed. And one of the things that I noticed is that, I'm kind of communicating with her son. And when she left, she was done with that too. I had never seen such a clean departure out of all the departures I've ever witnessed. But she's like nowhere to be found. She was done with this plane. She was done. I'm out of here. Yeah, I hope I taught him enough, because now it's up to him. Alrighty then.
My father made one of those journeys. We had such a close relationship. My father is who took care of me. And when he died, he had the worst few months. The hospice said they never saw anything like it. He really, I don't know what it was, and it affected my health, and it affected my connection with Source and the spirits, to watch what my father had to go through. But when he finally went, this man shot out. And other psychics saw it. My husband saw it. I saw it. Everybody saw it. He shot out like the fastest bullet. There couldn't have been a fastest bullet on the planet to get back to Source. Because I think he was afraid somebody was going to try and pull him back. And this man, he trained for the Olympics when he was young. He was an athlete. He did the greatest sprint to Source so that he could never be found again by another human being.
And maybe that would be an ideal goal, to be so clear that you're done with this lifetime, that, and if you have loved ones like a mother or something, to have those important conversations, and while you can.
Yeah.
Because even though I was sitting, and I remember, and I didn't even know, I didn't have this planned. You can't plan this stuff. I decided to take a drive up the Mohawk Trail, and I ended up driving all the way, like for a whole 8 hours, and ended up at my dad's grave, reading this letter to him that I had written as part of an amends process. And I didn't even know, Sandra, but it was the anniversary of his death.
Oh, my goodness.
It just was like, I happened to be on the East Coast in the fall because I love to go in the leaves. And then I'm like looking, and I'm there like, you can't plan this stuff. So, and one thing you did mention, that no one can understand the level of a grief. When I was in the process of hating my father when he died, because I was 30-ish, all that stuff was coming up. And yet 3 weeks after his death, there was such a visceral, grief is visceral, and we don't, we think it's something else, but it's a visceral thing. Like all of a sudden, an organ is removed type of thing. And, in this culture, we just don't do much with it. I remember being in Chile once, and Luz Clara telling us that in the Mapuche tribe, the women wear black for a year. So that people know that they're grieving, that it's a whole cycle. We want to get it done, sit Shiva, eat, and move on. And, that's just not the way of that. And especially at the loss of a parent, because our mother's lineage goes back all the way to the first mother or two.
Right.
And we forget that we're grieving for the whole lineage, not just one little mother. So I hope you celebrated your mother this Mother's Day. And Sandra, do you want to do us a journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So meeting people after they die is not work that I'm willing to teach on the Shaman's Cave. It's very advanced work. And so I'm going to put in my plug, which I'll put in a plug on every show, because we're really having a problem right now on my website with people showing up. We're doing Zoom. We're limiting to a very short, to 6 people, so that everybody in the group, as well as the teacher, can watch you do a healing and give you feedback. Everybody in the group can give you feedback, so there's no private work, there's no private anything. Everything you do in the workshop is watched and then not judged, but given good feedback of how you can improve your work. And so advanced healing is not a joke. It's tens of thousands of years old. It's really needed. I really want people to sign up for advanced healing classes. We need people doing soul retrievals again. We need extraction. We need psychopomp work. And during the COVID, for obvious reasons, a lot of these workshops couldn't go on, or people found people who were willing, because they needed the money, to teach these advanced methods with no training. And so we're really looking at so many crises on the planet. But one of the crises that we're looking at is that people will do anything for money and are willing to hurt anyone. And with shamanic healing work, clients can get hurt. So I ask, if you're interested in advanced healing work, train with somebody. They didn't necessarily have to train with me. I'm not the only shaman on the planet who trains people, but I give a rigorous training. And so check out shamanicteachers.com if you're interested in learning how to communicate with the dead. If you're interested in learning how to do psychopomp work, which is helping people cross over from this life into the transcendent realms. So for now, we're not meeting anybody who's deceased. What all we're doing is we're going inside of ourselves and reflecting on our connection with our mothers. And even if your mother is deceased, it's still a powerful time where you can go out and do a ceremony where you bring a flower out to the land and you talk to your mother and you tell her what's on your mind of what you got in this journey. So just remember that from a shamanic point of view, spirit is eternal, and you always have the possibility to speak to someone. So go inside yourself as I drum and think about, just reflect on something that you would like to share with your mother. It doesn't have to be an amends. It could be how much you loved her and how much you appreciated her being your mom and in your life. And this is an important thing for you to say to bring closure into your relationship. So here we go. Go within and reflect on an issue that you would like to speak about. So start to bring your awareness back to the space that you're in right now. Place your hands on your heart to bring in love for yourself, as well as for your mother, as well as for the earth, as well as for all the female ancestors who went through so much so that we may have love. Let's just say thank you to our mothers and to the feminine for the life that they brought to us.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, our connections to our ancestors. I always have this with my eye curtain.
Just hang it off the back.
Yeah. I think it's just, I don't know. The more I was able to talk to my parents before they died, it's not exactly like it did anything for my grief. I still had the grief, but I know I said what was in my heart, and that was really important. And I think it's important to all of us to have that level of communication, because what people are talking about right now and what I'm teaching about right now is how disconnected we are from ourselves, from spirit, from the earth, and the web of life, and that everything for our healing right now needs to be focused on who do we want to reconnect with and how do we reconnect. So I know that some of you have decided not to reconnect with your mothers. I get a lot of emails around that. But for those of you who are ready, this is a blessing to yourself, to your family, and to the earth.
And to your community as well. Speaking of training, I have a training that starts next week, and it's the Windwork Basics. And it's a really great foundational shamanic course. I guess in the past I've been hesitant to use that word, and we're going to probably talk about that a little bit. But it is a shamanic course. We every week we do a journey. Every week we learn to integrate. Basically, it's a course about how to start to move your life from a linear landscape into a more cyclical world, and how to basically to start to live by the seasons of your own soul. And it begins on Tuesday. So if you're interested, there's a link in this week's email, or look on the website. And it's a really great training, and it gets you going on that personal work.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have anything coming up?
And I'm going to start. I'm actually starting a new book, and I've created my sacred space in my house. But when I write a new book, I can't teach and write at the same time. So I've been advertising and promoting on the emails, Healing with Spiritual Light, through Sounds True, which is my Medicine for the Earth course. But I'm going to start changing that to promoting a course on shamanic journeying that I taught for the Shift Network, that prepares people to jump into all these courses that people are teaching, where journeying is part of it. This teaches you step by step how to journey and what the spirit world is about. So for those of you who are listening, who are fascinated by shamanic journeying, I do have a beautiful evergreen course that I'm going to start promoting.
Great. So you can look for that in the email too. And then follow us over at YouTube and the Shamans Cave on Facebook. And if you want to be on our mailing list, go over to shamanstv.com and sign up there. And then you'll get every time we drop a new show, you'll get it right in your inbox. So that's probably the easiest way. And if you like ads free, go over to SoundCloud or Apple iTunes, the podcast store, Apple, and you can listen to it without commercials as well.
And I want to say that a lot of our listeners are like me, as uncomputer savvy as they come. And so I'm getting emails from people on, I can't find a show. How do you find a show? I went to Shamans TV and I don't know how to find the show. So I didn't know how to find the show either. So I put it in the search and it came right up. So for those of you, because I'm really being overwhelmed with emails from the Shaman's Cave, I can't find the show that you're talking about. I can't find the show. I can't find the show. Put it in the search button on shamanstv.com and the show will pop up.
Oh, that's great. And then I think if you sign up, you get year one, and, we've kind of made a library too of it. But thank you. We really appreciate that you even care to look for the shows, and we're grateful that you're here, and we love doing this. So we will see you again next week.
We love you. Take care. Have a beautiful week. Love you, Renee. Thank you.